all these rumors that the Texans were going to trade back from number 2, not take a quarterback, draft the best defensive player on the board, do whatever. The last couple of weeks have been like an assassination campaign on C.J. Stroud's draft stock. We'd heard that he dissed the Manning Academy. We'd heard that he scored abysmally in the S2 cognition scores, and then it was Will Levis being the favorite for number 2, or could it be, Anthony Richardson? Would it just be a defender? And then they end up just picking C.J. Stroud anyway, and then trading back to number 3. So they did what people were talking about, which is get Will Anderson and the quarterback, only they did it the other way around, which I think is the right way of doing it. They took the quarterback and then tried to get a deal done with Arizona to move back up, which I think is smarter than having taken the best defensive player and then said, hey, we want to come back up for a quarterback, which automatically just puts a 20% premium on the asking price.
Okay, I was pretty harsh to the Texans on the live show.
Yes.
If they had done that for the quarterback, if they had picked Will Anderson at 2,
right, and
then traded up for C.J. Stroud per PFF rules, would I say, oh, that's okay? Give up whatever you need for the quarterback. But that's not the reality, man. Well, the reality is they already had the pick to select the quarterback. They did that. They got C.J. Stroud at 2. And then, in a completely separate decision, they decided to move from 12 to 3. And here's what happened. Are we going to talk about Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, or do we want to get right into how they got Will Anderson?
Let's talk through the Texans thing first. I think it is fair, though. Your point is reasonable, that it is a separate move. You can't sort of treat it like, what if they just did it for the quarterback, then it would make sense. But what if you combine the two and say, look, they wanted to do this package deal where they come out of the first round. Because remember, they pick at number 2, they pick at number 12. They want to come out of the first round with both a quarterback and Will Anderson. So at that point, your options are take Will Anderson at 2, hope a quarterback lasts till 12, pick whichever one's available, which in this case would have been Will Levis, the end, right? Or pick Will Anderson at 2, trade up, grab a quarterback at whatever that costs you, or do the way they did, which is pick the quarterback, trade back up for Will Anderson. So most of those dynamics involve trading back up. But if you net out the thing and say it's for 2 players, that's the deal. Like, the 2 players cost you the 2 picks plus the trade collateral, as opposed to Will Anderson cost you that. It might be a more reasonable or more fair way of breaking it down.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is they already owned a pick 2.
Because your point is, using the information would say if you trade up for any position that isn't a quarterback, it's effectively bad, right? Because you're never going to get the value back. But if you trade up for the quarterback, you can, because the quarterback is worth so much more than any other position in terms of contributing to wins on the field. But the only difference between the way that the Texans did it and the other way is it's effectively arbitrary, right? Either way they're trading, it's just which order they took the players. So you have to look at it in both. You have to combine the moves, essentially.
You tried to do that with the Eagles last year, and I thought that was a fair. You did the whole combine the moves thing with the Dolphins or something when they traded back and then traded up, and I think that was a fair point because their starting point was they didn't have these picks, and then they earned them, and then they moved them. The Texans started with pick 2. Yes. They got 12 in the Deshaun Watson deal. So now, to me, in a vacuum, they selected C.J. Stroud. Fine, good move. Fine, you get your quarterback. And then in a vacuum, they traded 4 picks for Will Anderson. 4 picks. So they swapped 2 to 12. And then next year's first.
But what if they just done it the other way around? What if they just taken Will Anderson at 2 and then traded back for the quarterback and given up exactly the same trade?
I would still say the same thing because I know that they could have taken the quarterback at 2 and didn't have to trade up. So here's what you're putting. So I look at these things as balance sheets, right? Here's what I get. Here's what I'm giving up. The Texans decided upon, let's say, Will Anderson and C.J. Stroud for the 12th pick. Pick 33 in the second round, which we know could be Joey Porter Jr. Could be a starter. Pick 33 in the second round. And then next year's first and next year's third. So 2 players, C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson, against those 4 picks. Now, let's do it the way you said. let's pretend that they drafted, Will Anderson first and then traded for. It's still the same two players.
Yes.
It's still the same two players. But the way I'm saying it, now you already have C.J. Stroud at pick 2, and then it becomes just Will Anderson for pick 12, pick 33, a first and a third round pick.
I mean, I want to be clear. I think they overpaid to move up whatever the deal was. And I don't think I would have moved up in the first place. I don't think Will Anderson is that special of a defensive prospect that you needed to make that move happen. I'm just saying that if you're in a world where there is a difference in value of trading up to get a random non-quarterback position and a quarterback position, the only thing that determines whether or not the Texans did that is arbitrarily which guy they drafted first. Like, theoretically, you can make the argument that the value of that trade changes if they just flip the order of the names they turned in. So I think you can make the argument that it's not quite as insane as it looked if you just say they traded all that for Will Anderson. But overall, I think they overpaid, and that makes the flip side of that, Arizona got a steal. Like, the Cardinals, who have been the team desperately trying to trade out of the number 3 spot since day one, managed to do that and arguably pick the player that they were going to get number 3 anyway if they hadn't been able to.
Cardinals won the draft. I mean, Eagles win.
There. I don't know about that.
Eagles and Seahawks, I think we're all going to agree. We love what they did. Both teams had 2 picks. They came into the draft with 2 picks. But I'm saying the Cardinals, with what they started with and what they left with, I think the Cardinals win this draft. Because I'm saying, they won a first-round pick from the Texans next year. The Texans could be picking in the top 10. Again, we're going to be sitting in these chairs, maybe, next year at this time, God willing, of course, next year at this time saying, look at the Cardinals, picking 9, picking 15, or maybe they're picking 22 or 28. Maybe the Texans are good, but they still have this free first rounder that they didn't need and a third rounder. And by the way, we're going to say, and last year they also maneuvered the board, got their guy, and then picked it 33 in the second round. They have another starter. They can get Joey Porter Jr., whoever, Brian Branch. They're getting another starter for this. The Cardinals won the draft from where they started and what they ended up with.
I don't know if they won the draft, but I think in this particular trade they did extremely well. So the Cardinals end up trading from 3 down to number 12, which was the Houston second pick. To do so, they also picked up pick number 33, a first-round pick in 2024, and a third-round pick in 2024. They also apparently had to give up pick 105 this year, which is a top of the 4th?
I think so. Yeah, top 4.
So top of the 4th round in order to make that happen. So that took them to number 12, but they traded up again. So they went from 12 to 6, trading with the Lions. They had to give up pick number 34 and 168 to make that happen, and get back pick number 6 and pick number 81. So that's a pretty decent trade for them as well. They didn't give up that much to get back up to 6. So they end up doing what the Eagles did with that trade down then trade up thing, and get Paris Johnson Jr., who was a guy being talked about as the number 3 pick to them when the theory was they might be stuck at that spot.
Let me try to lay it out a little differently here too. I love Will Anderson. I think he's great. I think he was the clear best edge defender in this class.
Yes.
So I get that. Like, if you're going to trade up, we always talk about you shouldn't have overconfidence and all that stuff. I think there are ways to be a little bit more confident in picks now.
Yeah.
And Will Anderson fits the bill as a guy that you could be more confident in. So I'll give you that. But then at the end of the day, going back to the balance sheet thing, if you put Will Anderson on the balance sheet and what he's going to bring, using WAR, using whatever, how is he going to – if he was Khalil Mack, Von Miller, Myles Garrett, if he was that good, will he bring the same return as 4 picks?
No, I agree with you.